Ophelia put on her clothes, glanced at me who was exhausted on the bed, threw down a bank card, and said disgustedly, "Go to the hospital and get rid of the child." Then disappear from my sight. His icy eyes, without a trace of emotion, regarded me as a tool for venting that could be discarded at any time. You. My heart was full of bitterness, and tears were almost about to burst out of my eyes. But before I could finish speaking, Ophelia raised her hand and interrupted me. "Although Elowen is not as good as you in bed, she is pure enough and knows how to keep herself clean. And you, full of filth, disgusting." I buried my head in the quilt and sobbed. With trembling hands, I sent a message to my mother, "Mom, I want to go home." Mom asked me when I would come back so that she could prepare a welcome banquet, finalize the engagement, and announce me as the family heir. But before I could reply, Ophelia lifted the quilt, grabbed my feet and dragged me off the bed. She said coldly, "What are you crying for? Do you want to dirty my bed for the last time? It's so disgusting. We have been together for 7 whole years. Why don't you believe that the child is yours?" My heart was like being cut by a knife. Today is my birthday and also our anniversary. In the past, Ophelia would only give me a lipstick. Now he has given me such a surprise gift. So what if it's been 7 years? You are just after my money. You have exchanged for a position in the company by constantly flattering and pleasing me with your coquettishness. A person who is dirty from head to toe. Why should I believe you? You are not even as good as a hair of Elowen. Ophelia didn't look back. While putting on his clothes, he said disdainfully. His words were sharper than knives, stabbing my heart. 7 years of emotional dedication, meticulous care, preparing everything he needs in daily life, and catering to all his interests. 7 years of accompanying and striving. In order to help him negotiate business, I ran around. I fainted many times due to low blood sugar and also developed stomach problems. Now it is completely denied by his casual words. If he dislikes me so much, then why did he be with me in the first place? Has he forgotten the vow in front of the Buddha? "Arya, I swear. I only love you. I will not let you cry or be bullied in this life." But it is he who makes me cry and be bullied. Remember, without me, there would be no you. Ophelia glanced at me sideways. "Okay, I'll go. I'll go." I wiped away my tears, gave a self-deprecating smile, picked up that bank card, and continued, "Only giving me money for an abortion. Isn't Ophelia a bit too stingy? A vain woman is not as pure and flawless as Elowen." Ophelia snorted coldly and continued, "Move out as soon as possible to avoid Elowen's misunderstanding. At the company, let Elowen get familiar with the process. After handing over the work, you can leave." After saying that, he threw down a check and left with long strides. I looked at Ophelia's back, clenched my fists tightly. My nails had sunk into my flesh, and my whole body was trembling uncontrollably. Defying the family for love. Compromising for love for so long. After all, can't I hold on to the kite that wants to fly far away? The person I can't bear to part with doesn't miss me at all. On my way to the hospital, I booked a plane ticket to Jinghai. Looking out of the window, I had many thoughts. Once upon a time, Ophelia and I also had good times. When I first met Ophelia, I was the host of a talent show, and Ophelia was a contestant who came on stage to perform. Singing, dancing, being funny and so on. Although Ophelia tried very hard, he was still sharply criticized by 50 judges and was completely belittled. They said that Ophelia was only fit to clean toilets and would never be able to be a star in this life. But instead of being discouraged, Ophelia always kept a smile and said that he would work hard. His confident and indomitable character deeply attracted me. It can be said that it was love at first sight. Even though we didn't talk much and didn't even have each other's contact information. Later, I looked through Ophelia's personal information and found that he had registered his own personal studio. I resolutely decided to apply for a job. At that time, in Ophelia's studio, except for himself, there was only a cooking aunt. They were pleasantly surprised by my arrival, but they couldn't offer much salary. I didn't care. I was willing to be his agent, invest in his future, and silently understand everything about Ophelia. He likes to eat Sichuan cuisine. I learn it after work. He likes to play tennis. I also learn it. He doesn't have the habit of having breakfast and often has a stomachache. I will bring him a portion every day. Many times, when he encounters a bottleneck in writing songs, I will always give him inspiration in time. In the early stage of the studio, there was often a shortage of funds. I paid to fill it. Therefore, he promised me 10% of the shares. But as Ophelia became more and more famous, one album after another was released, and one concert after another was held. The studio also transformed into a company. He didn't mention the shares again. I just thought he had forgotten. I was only happy for his success. Our relationship heated up when we were competing for a film and television performance opportunity. The investor specifically asked me to negotiate. As a result, the other party got me drunk and tried to do something improper. Fortunately, Ophelia arrived in time and rescued me. At that moment, he was my knight. At that moment, I was the princess he guarded. Ambiguity spread between us. Ophelia could give me gifts, could say he loved me, and could share the same bed with me. But he was always reluctant to officially announce it. I thought Ophelia needed time to accept it and fantasized about walking into the marriage hall one day. But suddenly Ophelia had another woman outside. At first, I thought it was because I didn't do something well. Ophelia deliberately ignored me and punished me. So I was doubly good to him and accompanied him for a long time as a confession. However, the women outside him changed one after another. But I still can't have a name. When the hospital broadcast called my name, I took a deep breath and stroked my lower abdomen as I walked into the operating room. Baby, choose a good family to be reborn into next time. Mom is sorry for you. Mom doesn't have the courage to face it. I also don't want you to be without father's love after being born and be pointed at by outsiders. Because I have been busy for Ophelia all these years and still be tossed around at night. My body is getting weaker and weaker. After going through this in the hospital, when I came out, I only felt dizzy and had to walk while holding on to the wall. Buzz. At this moment, Ophelia called, "Where are you? Why haven't you come to the company yet? Elowen has been waiting for you for a long time with a cold, you know." His tone was very impatient and cold. "I just came out of the hospital. Can I take a day off? Now I am very tired and want to sleep. Even speaking is so weak as if I am about to die." Did you really get rid of the child?" Ophelia was stunned at first, and then suddenly became furious and said, "Do you really want to show your loyalty to me like this? Unfortunately, it's too late. I don't buy this. Come to the set immediately and see me in the dressing room. Otherwise, according to the contract, you will pay liquidated damages and be prohibited from engaging in similar industries for 5 years. The contract that was once said to be a guarantee for me has now become a means of threat by Ophelia." Ophelia didn't give me any leeway and hung up the phone directly. He seemed to have forgotten again that this performance opportunity was also obtained from a sister after drinking until vomiting. I could only drag my weak body to the set, and then I was immediately pointed at by a group of people. Someone has always wanted to become official, but was preempted by a little girl. She is basically a vase who depends on others. It is expected to be replaced. Without Ophelia, where would she be today? She really can't figure out her own position. In the past, they respected me very much and thought that I would get married to Ophelia. But later, there was no movement for a long time, and Ophelia's rumored girlfriends changed one after another. Gradually, they all regarded me as a joke. No one respected me, and they would not recognize my long-term efforts and contributions to Ophelia. I lowered my head and walked towards the dressing room. When I glanced up, I saw Elowen holding a piece of streaky pork and feeding it into Ophelia's mouth. There was only one bowl of rice in front of the two of them. Suddenly, I felt extremely sad. In the past, Ophelia told me that he had a cleanliness obsession and could absolutely not tolerate eating a meal with others or being fed by others. And in order to maintain his figure, he would never eat a single bit of fat. But just now his face was full of happy smiles. In the 7 years of getting along with me, the habit that has never changed. When he met Elowen for only a month, it was completely changed. This is love. I can only be regarded as a tool for venting to pass the loneliness. Sister Arya, what are you doing standing at the door? Come in. Don't be so formal. Elowen found me in a daze. The corner of her mouth raised a proud arc and greeted me in the tone of a hostess. Sneaky, like a mouse. Ophelia glanced at me in the mirror and said coldly and sarcastically. Hearing his words, Elowen's smile became even more proud. But I was full of bitterness and couldn't say anything. In the past, he called me baby one by one. Now he compares me to a mouse. Ophelia. You are too cruel. Elowen, get familiar with the work with Arya. If you don't understand anything, just ask directly. If she makes things difficult for you, just tell me. Ophelia lovingly stroked Elowen's hair and reminded attentively. Okay, love you. Elowen kissed Ophelia's cheek and then walked towards me and said, Sister Arya, please lead the way. Although her words were polite, her eyes were full of provocation. As a loser, I am not qualified to say anything. I can only take Elowen to get familiar with the work on the set step by step. She looked around curiously. She walked into the prop room one step ahead of me, picked up the spring knife on it and asked, Sister Arya, are these all real? Will it hurt people? No, they are all not sharpened. I shook my head and said, Really? I'll try. Like a curious baby, Elowen held the spring knife and drew it on her palm. In the next second, she screamed. The blade cut her palm and blood flowed. I was completely stunned. People on the set who heard the commotion all ran over. Immediately Elowen covered her hand and cried loudly. After I came to my senses, I quickly picked up the medicine box next to me and bandaged Elowen's wound. Elowen, what happened? What's wrong with you? At this time, Ophelia hurried through the crowd and ran to Elowen. He asked distressfully and anxiously. Ophelia, I'm sorry. Sister Arya told me that the spring knife in the prop room is fake, so I tried it out of curiosity. Unexpectedly. Elowen said half of her words and then pitifully buried herself in Ophelia's arms and said, It hurts so much, it hurts so much. Ophelia hugged Elowen tightly and turned to glare at me and said, Arya, you are so vicious. You actually deliberately deceived Elowen. These props have always been fake. I don't know why they became real today. I hurriedly explained. The people around sneered. It was originally fake, but you can replace it with a real one. Usually you are full of tricks. It's not impossible to do something secretly to teach Miss Elowen a lesson. Yes, who doesn't know that you are jealous of Miss Elowen for taking your position? Human nature is vividly reflected at this second. Seeing that Elowen is loved by Ophelia, they naturally all favor Elowen to please Ophelia and get more job opportunities. Did you hear that? Everyone knows that you are the murderer. Do you still want to deny it? Apologize to Elowen immediately. Ophelia stared at me coldly and said, I won't admit to things I haven't done. I took a deep breath and said, In the past, I would endure humiliation to please Ophelia. But now that I have been completely abandoned, there is no need to be wronged and compromise. Shameless. Ophelia frowned and glared at me again. It seemed that I was even more annoying than mice and cockroaches in the sewer. Brother Ophelia, don't blame Sister Arya too much. I believe she didn't do it on purpose. Don't punish her. Elowen suddenly pleaded for me. But I clearly found a trace of cunning in her eyes. When Ophelia heard Elowen say this, he felt even more distressed. His eyes looking at me were even more fierce and disgusted. Look how kind Elowen is. Look at you again. So ugly. Since you have done something wrong, you have to be punished. Either kneel down and apologize to Elowen, or let Elowen get revenge. Otherwise, don't even think about leaving here today. He threatened forcefully. Everyone around had high corners of their mouths and a playful look in their eyes, waiting to see my joke. Some people even took out their mobile phones and prepared to record my humble ugliness. After all, I am a well-known sycophant. I can't live without Ophelia at all. Ophelia, are you really unwilling to believe me once? I called him by his full name for the first time. Believing you is worse than believing that a pig can climb a tree. Ophelia sneered contemptuously. I didn't speak anymore. I picked up the spring knife on the ground and suddenly drew it on my palm. Suddenly, blood flowed. Everyone was stunned. Especially Ophelia, who frowned suddenly again. Not enough? I drew on my palm again hard. There was even more blood flowing. And it hurt even more. But I didn't cry or frown. Instead, I laughed. Ophelia, is it enough? If not, I can continue. I raised the spring knife again. Are you crazy? Ophelia snatched the spring knife away and said angrily, Arya, you are really hopeless. You actually want to coerce me with this method. Disappear from my sight immediately. Immediately. He roared like an angry lion. Listen to Ophelia. Humph. I turned and left. When I walked out of the set, I cried while laughing. I tremblingly dialed my mother's phone. Mom, I'll go home tonight. I want to eat the dumplings you made. Tears are very salty and bitter, like eating coptis. The blood is very bright and has stained my phone. I randomly found a pharmacy, bandaged my wound simply, went back and took my important documents, and then went straight to the airport. I didn't take anything else. Because those things are all tainted with Ophelia's aura. I don't want them anymore. When I landed in Jinghai, my mother had been waiting outside the airport for a long time. There was also a young man beside her. The other party had sharp eyebrows and starry eyes, and a tall and straight figure. At first glance, he had been in the military and had undergone a lot of experiences. Baby girl. Mom opened her arms and hugged me tightly in her arms. Extremely warm. It reminded me of when I was a child. Every time I was unhappy, I would ask my mother to hold me and comfort me. Mom, I miss you so much, I miss you so much. Touched by the scene, I couldn't help choking up. I should have listened to my mother's advice back then. Otherwise, I wouldn't have ended up in such a miserable situation like a moth to a flame. I really regret it. Mom misses you too. You child haven't been home for several years. Mom's voice was also a little choked. Then she noticed my hand and couldn't help being surprised and said, Baby girl, what's wrong with your hand? I accidentally cut it. I said casually. I don't want to tell Mom about what happened. I don't want to make Mom sad. You have to be more careful in the future. Mom was full of distress. Then she introduced the young man beside her to me. He is your fiancé Caleb. When you were very young, you played together. You almost burned down the house. I have this memory. But at that time, I didn't know the other party's name or the engagement. I only knew how to play. Hello. Caleb took the initiative to reach out and say hello. Hello. I smiled politely and shook hands with him. Caleb let go as soon as we touched. He was particularly sensible of propriety and boundaries. Then he took the initiative to take my luggage. After getting in the car, he specifically handed me a cushion. This warm little gesture is very impressive. The car drove home. After 7 years, the decoration hasn't changed at all. Even the flowers and plants in front of the door are the same as before. The gardener uncle in charge of pruning said to me that this was specially requested by Mom, because the flowers and plants were all arranged by me. Not only that, but there is not a single change in every decoration in the house. Everything remains the same. Everywhere shows Mom's longing for me. And I, for a fickle man, secretly left home for 7 years. Just when I was thinking randomly, I looked up and saw a couple. Mom said they were Caleb's parents. I greeted them with a smile and said, Uncle and Aunt. Caleb's parents had no heirs. While pulling me to sit beside them, they kept praising me. It made my cheeks burn and I was a little embarrassed. Caleb took on the role of a nanny and served food and poured water for each of us. Let's eat quickly. The whole table of dishes is cooked by Caleb himself. Mom glanced at me and continued, in order to make what you want to eat. He specially enrolled in a cooking training class. I was very shocked after hearing this. Anyway, Caleb is a young master. How could he have the thought to study how to cook for me? Like Ophelia, he basically doesn't touch anything in spring water at home. Even fruits have to be cut. Otherwise, he is too lazy to eat at all. In comparison, it's really a world of difference. How on earth was I so bewitched back then that I had to be determined, not hesitate to quarrel with my mother and follow Ophelia? At the dinner table, both parents wanted to set the wedding date. Caleb also interrupted deliberately and asked for my opinion. After confirming that I had no objection, he continued the discussion and agreed to take wedding photos first tomorrow morning. This made me feel respected. My dignity that had been trampled into pieces was reassembled at this moment. That night, Ophelia called me and said disgustedly, "Arya, you are gone. Why don't you take your things away? Elowen will misunderstand when she sees them. Then you can just throw them all away." I said indifferently. "Throw them all away? Including the amulet I asked for you?" Ophelia was very surprised. "Didn't you want me to throw it away a long time ago? You said it was bought from a street stall." I asked back. Ophelia was silent for a few seconds and hung up the phone. I simply put Ophelia on the blacklist. The amulet was given to me by Ophelia when I had a fever 5 years ago. I have always kept it. But he said it was casually bought from a street stall. Every woman related to him has one. So, I am just a fish in the pond. When needed, pick it up and admire it. When not needed, throw it away at will. But this time, I don't want Ophelia anymore. The next morning, Caleb picked me up as promised to take wedding photos. He asked me what kind of photos I wanted to take. I said I wanted it by the sea. Caleb didn't hesitate at all and immediately notified the photography team to gather by the sea. In any case, everything is centered around me first. It makes me feel like I am dreaming. I remember when I was with Ophelia, it was always Ophelia who was the center. And Ophelia is the same. Only then can he think of me. For example, Ophelia doesn't like to eat green peppers and likes to eat coriander. So every time I order takeout or cook, I will pay attention. But Ophelia won't. He will only say that I am picky about food. When we arrived at the seaside, I put on a wedding dress and Caleb put on a suit. Everyone said we were a good match. Especially at the moment when our eyes met, I couldn't help smiling. After the shooting, I posted a few electronic versions on Moments. It caused a sensation in an instant. "You like Ophelia? Why did you suddenly take wedding photos with someone else?" This sentence is asked the most by others. I replied uniformly, "I have nothing to do with Ophelia anymore. I don't like Ophelia either." Half an hour later, Ophelia called me with a colleague's mobile phone and said coldly, "Arya, what are you doing? Do you think taking wedding photos with someone else can scare me?" "Humph, I guess that's an actor you hired, right? This trick doesn't work on me. Come back to work quickly. Otherwise, I will sue you for breach of contract." Ophelia said one sentence after another. He still thought that I was thinking of a little trick to attract his attention. "Whatever you want. I'm going to eat with my fiancé." I hung up the phone. The reason why I was controlled by Ophelia with a contract before is that I love him and want to keep him. It's not because I'm afraid of liquidated damages. "Arya, is something wrong? I see that your complexion is not right." At this time, Caleb came over and asked with concern. "Nothing. I met a disgusting liar." I shook my head with a smile and said, "Do you need my help?" Caleb was still not at ease. "It's okay. I've already blacklisted him." I said, "All right." Caleb nodded slightly, then stared firmly into my eyes and said, "But if there is really something, tell me as soon as possible." His eyes were extremely firm. I was suddenly surrounded by a sense of security. I nodded, "Feel at ease, Ly." Then I took Caleb's arm and found a small restaurant nearby to eat. Caleb didn't dislike it at all. Without even looking at the menu, he skillfully told the boss several dishes I like. At this moment, happiness is once again concretized. Caleb knows my preferences, respects my opinions, and is gentle and calm in dealing with the world. Luck. Finally it has come to me. Recalling that when I went out to eat with Ophelia before, when we were poor, we often ate at roadside stalls and small restaurants. However, after Ophelia became famous, he sneered at those small restaurants and thought that eating Western food was the most upscale. It's fine if he doesn't eat it himself, but he doesn't allow me to eat it either. It's simply outrageous. On the contrary, Caleb, no matter in terms of family background, cultivation, ability or status, is much higher than Ophelia. But he doesn't have any arrogance. He doesn't dislike the life of ordinary people, and he won't deliberately look down on others. Just looking at his character, he is worthy of entrusting. In addition, Caleb also helps me get familiar with the family business. If there is anything I don't understand, he will answer every question. Once late at night, I was looking at a business plan and found many problems. I subconsciously called Caleb. He answered the phone groggily, but without any anger upon waking up. Instead, he patiently answered my questions and accompanied me until dawn. In comparison, Ophelia is nothing. I remember once when Ophelia was taking a nap and the brand side called him. I had to go and call him. As a result, I was scolded. Annoying. Don't you have a brain of your own? Can't you handle it yourself? If you can't be an agent, resign. There are people who can replace you. Get out. Relying on my liking, he vented his temper on me wantonly and even splashed a glass of water on my face. It made me embarrassed in front of everyone. I was wronged and shed tears. Ophelia just sneered. There was no apology afterwards. Thinking back, I feel that I was so stupid and foolish at that time. I should have escaped long ago. After getting along for a few days, Caleb and my relationship is getting better and better. We are almost inseparable. We will go to a Chinese restaurant to eat every night. Perhaps because of the sweetness of love, I don't feel tired of it at all. Instead, I enjoy this time for two after a day's work. It was the same tonight. But Caleb was too busy, so I went to the restaurant to wait for him first. Who knew that as soon as I sat down, I saw Ophelia frowning and rushing in. Why is he in Jinghai? I raised my eyebrows in surprise. I had a bad premonition in my heart. Arya. Sure enough, Ophelia walked up to me angrily, narrowed his eyes and said, "Caught you, right? You, like before, like to eat these unclean things." As soon as these words came out, everyone looked sideways with extremely strange expressions. You are just as self-righteous. I replied bluntly without mercy. Humph. Ophelia didn't care about other people's eyes at all. He grabbed my wrist and said coldly, "Come back with me." Let go. I shook off Ophelia's hand and frowned and said, "I'm about to get married. Please don't pull me around to avoid misunderstandings, okay?" At this moment, I really think Ophelia is seriously ill. He clearly pushed me away and told me to get out. Now he has traveled all the way to Jinghai to find me and take me back. What's on his mind? Is he tired of Elowen and thinking of my goodness? Others don't know what little trick you are playing. Don't I know? It's nothing more than trying to attract my attention. This time I give you a step down. Don't be ungrateful. Ophelia said coldly. Whether it's true or not, you will know 3 days later when you go to Mingzhu Grand Hotel. I said indifferently. Absurd and ghostly reasons that even a 3-year-old wouldn't believe. Do you think you can deceive me? Ridiculous. As Ophelia spoke, he was about to forcibly drag me away again. Let go of my wife. Just at this moment, Caleb came. He pulled Ophelia away and then stood in front of me. It's so full of boyfriend power. Ophelia is shorter than Caleb by a section and can only look up and say, "You are the actor that Arya found, right? How much did she pay you?" "I'll double it. Get out of here immediately." Many people present no Caleb's identity. When they heard what Ophelia said, they immediately laughed. Talking about money in front of the Caleb family in Jinghai? Are you sick? Caleb also laughed. Ophelia, if you still want to hold a concert in Jinghai, then get out of here as far as possible and don't appear in front of Arya again. I was stunned. It seems that Caleb already knew that Ophelia had arrived in Jinghai, but he didn't tell me. Probably because he was afraid that I would be annoyed. As for my king-me, Caleb must also know very well. But he still didn't mention a word. This man is extremely gentle. Ophelia has been arrogant in the past 2 years. Where has he been threatened like this? Immediately he sneered and said, "You are too deep into the drama. Do you really think you are some young master? Caleb didn't say a word and directly handed over a business card. General Manager Caleb of Zhonghing Group. Ophelia murmured as he lowered his head. Then his face suddenly changed and said, impossible. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Perhaps many people don't know Caleb's face, but everyone knows the name of Zhonghing Group. What's impossible? He is Caleb, the eldest son of the Caleb family. The waiter next to him couldn't stand it anymore. This. Ophelia trembled all over, his pupils constricted. He no longer had the previous arrogance. Instead, he was like a mouse seeing a cat, with cold sweat streaming down his forehead. Can you leave now? Caleb said coldly. Ophelia swallowed. He gave me a dissatisfied look and then slandered, Caleb, you have to be careful. Don't be deceived. Arya has a very bad reputation. She used to stay by my side and couldn't be driven away no matter what. No matter how many girlfriends I change, she is still willing to be a mistress. And the food she cooks is unpalatable and there are many troubles. Slap. Caleb raised his hand and slapped Ophelia. He said coldly, will my vision be worse than yours? I know very well what kind of person Arya is. It's obvious that this scumbag has let him down. How dare he talk nonsense and slander randomly here? Usually Caleb is very gentle and indifferent. This time he was angry and hit someone. Obviously extremely angry. Ophelia covered his face. His expression was very ugly. But he still insisted, Arya has been with me for 7 years. She loves me. This is just a tantrum. Everyone knows that she is my #1 sycophant. And she had an affair with another man and had an abortion. As soon as the words fell, Caleb kicked out. Ah! Ophelia let out a painful cry and flew a meter away and landed heavily. He covered his stomach. His eyes were full of shock. He couldn't understand at all how Arya could be favored by the eldest son of the Caleb family. You are like a barking dog. Very annoying. I sent someone to investigate. Arya didn't betray you. Everything was fabricated by Elowen. Caleb clenched his fist, his face full of anger, wishing he could tear Ophelia to pieces. When the restaurant owner saw this situation, he quickly asked several strong waiters to drive Ophelia out. Arya, it's okay. Let's eat. Caleb took a deep breath, turned his head and smiled at me. He always leaves the gentlest side for me. Unlike Ophelia, who is always gentle to others and cruel to me. I slowly sat down and hesitated and said, Caleb, don't you dislike me? After speaking, I lowered my head slightly and didn't dare to look into Caleb's eyes. But no matter what choice Caleb makes, I accept it. Why should I dislike it? Caleb asked back. I was stunned for a moment. I raised my head and found that Caleb's eyes were full of tenderness without a trace of disgust. Fool. Caleb helped me unpack the tableware and continued, maybe you have forgotten. In fact, you are the girl I vowed to marry since I was a child. I have been to your city. I have witnessed your busy figure and also seen when you were scolded by Ophelia. I was stunned again. I really can't remember things from childhood very clearly. After all, I only met once. As for Caleb secretly watching me, it was really something I didn't expect. At that time, no matter how Ophelia treated you, but you were always with him. I was both distressed and envious of Ophelia. I thought, if you were by my side, I would definitely protect you well and not let you be hurt in the slightest. Caleb recalled. There was a hint of jealousy and pity in his words. I grabbed Caleb's hand and said seriously, I have no feelings for Ophelia at all in my heart. Well, I know. Caleb nodded and showed a smile. He continued, I finally waited for you and I will never let go in this life. The smile is like the spring breeze, moistening my heart and melting all my uneasiness. It also made my eyes moist involuntarily. I secretly vowed that I must treat this man in front of me well in this life. The next day, I went to work in the company as usual, but saw Ophelia and Elowen in the hall. Elowen's hair was messy and her whole body was injured. Obviously she had been severely beaten. Arya. Ophelia excitedly stopped me and said, I'm sorry. I misunderstood you before. I was deceived by this bitch Elowen. I brought her here to confess to you. After he finished speaking, he kicked Elowen to the ground. Miss Arya, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Elowen knelt in front of me. Please be magnanimous and forgive me. If I had known that you were the eldest lady of the Arya family in Jinghai, I would never dare to frame you. You are magnanimous and don't care about me like a villain. Spare my life. I am willing to be your cow and horse. As she spoke, she cried. She no longer had the pretentious look before. Why should I forgive you? At this moment, I remembered the grievances of the past and couldn't help but have red eyes. Elowen's face turned pale in an instant. She begged for mercy again and said, You can ask me to do anything. Really? Ophelia grabbed Elowen's hair and beat her violently. Then he said to me, Arya, I vented your anger for you. Can you forgive me? We have 7 years of relationship. We can start over. This time I will definitely not let you down. After he finished speaking, he took out a ring from his pocket, knelt on one knee, and looked at me affectionately. Slap. I raised my hand and knocked off the ring and said coldly, Don't disgust me, okay? Whether there is a Elowen or not, you will treat me like that. You are a coward who only uses others as an excuse. You regret it now only because you found out that I am the daughter of the Arya family and want to take advantage of this to climb up. Get out. Don't bother me again in the future. After speaking, I turned and left. Arya, listen to my explanation. Ophelia wanted to catch up. I called the security guard to stop him and directly drove him out of the door and never allowed him to enter again. But Ophelia didn't leave. He just stood outside and waited. He even ordered a bouquet of flowers and shouted to confess his love to me. It extremely affected the operation of the company. Many onlookers who ate melons recorded videos and uploaded them online, causing a wave of public opinion. The security guards couldn't drive away Ophelia, this rascal. I had to call the police and take him away. I didn't see Ophelia for the next few days, and my wedding with Caleb also took place as scheduled. The scale is unprecedentedly grand. Celebrities from all walks of life gather together. Even media shooting has to use drones. I was wearing a white wedding dress. Led by my mother, I walked to Caleb's side. Amid warm applause from the audience, Caleb knelt on one knee and put a ring on me. There was a happy smile on my face. But at this moment, the annoying Ophelia broke in and cried and shouted, Arya, you can't marry him. You should marry me. Obviously you liked me so much and loved me so much before. How can you give up just like that? With his actions, he undoubtedly disrupted the wedding. Everyone was very surprised. Mom was the first to come to her senses and scolded Ophelia, Ophelia, you scumbag. My daughter left her hometown for you and abandoned the family business. But you are so half-hearted. Changing women is like changing clothes. How dare you come and make trouble now? The more Mom said, the angrier she became. Her body began to tremble. Mom, there's no need to entangle with this kind of person. Just drive him away. I comforted my mother. Caleb immediately winked at the bodyguards on both sides. Don't drive me away. Ophelia hurriedly said. Arya, I love you. I really love you. I didn't know how to cherish it before. After you left, I couldn't sleep all night. I was too much. I deliberately angered you. I already know I was wrong and I will definitely correct it in the future. Please, give me a chance, okay? I was too lazy to pay attention to him and didn't want to say a word more to Ophelia. I let the bodyguards carry Ophelia away. The wedding continues. But there are already more and more rumors about me and Ophelia. Heartless media invited Ophelia to appear on the show, hoping to smear me through this. But Ophelia took this opportunity to confess to me and told all the bad things he had done to express his sincerity and repentance. The storm that could have formed public opinion subsided. Netizens are all scolding Ophelia as a scumbag. Deserved to die. Ophelia still didn't give up. He actually went to wait under the building of my company again. Send fresh flowers and desserts in the morning. Send a loving lunch at noon. Sing love songs at night. The police took Ophelia away and advised him many times, but it didn't work. I was also annoyed that I asked Caleb what to do. Caleb came up with an idea. Instead of avoiding Ophelia as before, he changed to showing affection in front of Ophelia actively. Eat the dessert lunch sent by Ophelia together, pick the roses sent by Ophelia together, kiss when Ophelia is singing love songs. As time passed, Ophelia's mentality exploded and he never came again. When I heard about Ophelia again, it was in a news. Ophelia, who wanted to quit the entertainment circle, burst into tears at the farewell concert. As a result, Elowen suddenly rushed onto the stage. While stabbing Ophelia more than a dozen times, she cursed the liar. Ophelia died on the spot. Elowen was arrested and sentenced to 20 years in prison. Originally, Ophelia's parents still wanted me to attend the funeral. I refused without hesitation and turned to go on a honeymoon abroad with Caleb. The past is gone with the wind. I don't want to entangle more. I just want to love Caleb well. This man who is gentle to the core and whose eyes are full of me,